In 2011 came out the superhero action film Ravan, and while it hasn't aged that well, it wasn't that good to begin with. Or was its fate met because it came out before its time? Let's analyze why Ravan failed in the breakdown of what would have potentially been the biggest movie of our generation. Ravan is very clearly a movie about games, at least it begins as that. There's many references throughout the film to some of the most popular video games, from which the film borrows many aspects of its action sequences, story arcs and whatnot. A few examples of these can be found right in the beginning, with the first sequence that carries aesthetics of a Devil May Cry game, and somehow has a similar title segment as the 2019 game Death Stranding. Weird considering there's an 8-year gap between both. There's many intentional and many unintentional references like this in the movie, not just to games, but comedic sections that hint to something like Mr. Bean, some borderline jokes about prejudice, intentional and unintentional as well, and some other social themes like feminism that are attached to certain characters, but never really pick up in the film. Now, one could say that trying to make sense of things in a superhero film targeted towards a younger and family audience doesn't really bring any worth to you or me, but that doesn't excuse the screenwriting that fails to maintain the barrage of ideas and sub-stories that it introduces. This is also followed by some other ignorable mistakes in the film, which stand out because of the other mistakes in the film, like how is a game developer able to afford $1 million London house? How's this car going through a bus while the people inside remain completely untouched? How's there a 20-minute brawl happening outside an international airport with no police or military involvement? There's many things like these in the film, which could have easily gone by unnoticed, but they stand out, like I said. Ravan tries hard to feel like a new, completely original superhero film, but it's hard to see it that way when it borrows so much from other movies, some of which aren't even superhero movies. And whatever it doesn't borrow feels unfinished and at times badly pulled off. Can anybody explain to me why is it that they would use the comic relief as the villain for the first half of the movie, but then not even give his character enough screen time to transition from the comedian to the villain, before ending his storyline right then and there? Why not let the character chase them from United Kingdom all the way to India? Also, why would they copy from Matrix, which is probably one of the most popular films of all time? But you know, that's what they did. See, Ravan is a strange film. It has some really good elements and some others that are just really bad. There is no middle ground with this film. It could have been either really great or really bad, and we all know how it ended up. Let me give you a few examples of the good aspects and then some of the bad ones. Well, the very well written motive behind SRK's character Shekhar in the film is one of my favorite aspects of the movie. His wanting to have an artistic achievement dedicated to his son, an angle that is really emotional and drives the audience to stick with the movie, rooting for everything to work out by the end. And at the same time, the film's endless suffering due to a badly written, stale and typical villain offering nothing from the mythology it supposedly is inspired from, other than its name and one scene that was probably made for the trailer more than the film. There's nothing that Arjun Rampal's overworked antagonist offers in this movie, especially when the name of the film is dedicated to him and yet he is the least explored character. How many of you thought that Ravan was actually Shah Rukh Khan's character's name and not Arjun Rampal's? It's also some bad marketing, right? I feel like more time was dedicated to bringing a shock value to the film. Oh, we have a cameo from last summer's sci-fi hit, even though it means nothing to the film. Oh, we're going to spend 15 minutes in a comic action sequence but give not enough screen time to the villain of the film in order to give him some depth. Oh, here's some great CGI for you, followed by a scene that looks like it's from a PS2 game. Oh, we're going to have one of the biggest artists of the world contribute his music to this film, but we're really not going to have any other use for it than just randomly putting in songs that work to play in a club maybe or at parties, but in the film make no sense. All that can be said at the end is, Ravan failed because of one reason: self-contradiction. Throughout the film, we have one good thing introduced, followed by one really bad. From irresponsible but innocent innuendos to blatant unfunny humor that doesn't align with the film's audience, from a great superhero film setup to an inconsistent screenplay, from amazing collaborations to unwanted cameos, even if respectable, from some greatly shot scenes to some horrible looking ones, and finally, from a good original superhero to a stereotypical villain that made the film fail. Thanks for watching. By the way, do you guys remember that McDonald's action figure that was all around the place when Robin was coming out? Those were some days, man. Hey, subscribe.